Dogman and Son. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I live in a town fairly far north in Wisconsin, and we have been seeing two dogmen, an awful lot, back before the pandemic happened. I'd like to tell you about the experiences my wife Doris and I had in those years, and how the sightings stopped after that. We've had another sighting recently, or fairly recently, back in December, and we've got some new ideas and theories we'd like to lay on you as well. Let me start at the beginning. I was fast asleep when this all started. I was thinking that this was 2018, but Doris proved to me that it had to have been 2017, our first summer living at this house, in a town that I won't name. We still live here, and we really don't want publicity about the Dogman. I shouldn't really get into why, but we feel it would be severely damaging to our work lives and our ability to pay our bills if we were known as the people who see Dogman families in their backyard. That is how this all started, though. I was awakened from my sleep by Scotty barking out back. Yapping might be a better word, but he was as loud could be on that night. Louder than I'd ever heard him before. At first I was like, "You go, Scotty, catch that bird," and I tried to get back to sleep. But then Scotty stopped sounding angry and started to sound like he was squealing in fear. And that's when I sat up in bed. It didn't sound so good out there, so I put on my slippers and I ran downstairs. Looking through windows in the back of the house, I could see my little terrier dog Scotty running back and forth with a frightened look on him. Then I could see what he was running from, and at first, I thought I was looking at some neighbor's kid wearing fur-covered pajamas. We don't live in a poor area, and so in my mind, I was seeing some rich guy's son, up past curfew and acting like a brat. Annoyed and half asleep, I ran down into the yard in my slippers, running back and forth after the boy who was after my dog. Inside my groggy brain, I was cursing the sugary food that parents feed their kids. It obviously kept them up all night. When I finally grabbed that kid around his midsection, I was surprised at how skinny and bony he seemed in my arms. He certainly didn't feel like he'd been eating any yo-hos or ha-has by Drake's at all. In fact, when I picked him up off the ground, I distinctly heard his stomach growling in hunger. He wasn't chasing my little yappy dog randomly. He was chasing with a purpose, and for a reason. Just then a loud crashing series of noises came from the woodline, and out of it emerged something that resembled a very thin kind of a bear. What I mean to say is it was as tall as a bear, like maybe 9 to 11 feet, way taller than any man, even a basketball player. His fur was colored differently than any American bear I'm familiar with. He had silvery gray fur, sort of like I've sometimes seen on wolves in documentaries on streaming. His face was a mix of white fur with the gray, and his bright glowing eyes were set against a field of pitch black fur. It looked like a cross between a wolf and a raccoon, but giant-sized and walking on its hind legs like a bear can do. I instinctively pulled the boy in the fur pajamas closer to me to protect him from this huge monster animal in front of us. The kid surprised me by struggling in my arms and then scratching me on my wrist. It was painful enough that my grip loosened and he struggled free. I shouted no as he ran toward the monster at the woodline, and the young one turned and hissed at me, almost like a cat. I think it was intended to be a frightening growl, but it came out more like a hiss. He showed me his teeth, and that was when I realized that I had not just been holding onto a human being. Those were the teeth of a predator. I had picked up some other kind of bipedal, two-legged animal besides a human, and his furry face had similar markings to the monster. The coloring on the small one reminded me of the face of a barred owl, as it had somewhat more white than the one I must presume was its parent. I had thought both of these figures were male at the time, but honestly I never noticed anything specifically male or female on either of these animal people. If that was his mother and not his father, then that animal kid had one big mama. So I don't remember saying anything when I saw that big monster, but my wife was suddenly on our back porch screaming like she was starring in a new Freddy Krueger movie. She told me later that she woke up and came out back after she heard me shouting, but I don't remember that part. Maybe I screamed when the younger beast scratched me. I just don't know. In either case, when my wife screamed behind me, me and the dog jumped straight up into the air in fear. The two hairy people split into the woods together in a run that was not limited to only 2 legs. They scrambled using every part of themselves in order to become unviewable to us. From then on, Scotty ran toward the woods yapping, and my wife screamed even louder. I managed to race after him and grab him before he hit the dark tree cover, and I ran back to the house, with him in my arms, as fast as I could. My wife is the one who told me that what we had seen was a family of Dogmen. I don't remember ever hearing of Dogman before, but my wife insists she talked to me about him on several occasions, prior to that experience with the 2 bear dogs. We both agreed that Scotty was not allowed to sleep out back any longer. He was going to have to be a house dog, unless we could be outside with him. But initially we made no other changes. In retrospect, I think this was because a Dogman sighting is sort of hard to fully accept. I mean, neither of us denied that it happened, but it was hard to rearrange the rest of our realities around this new information that there were real creatures that looked like werewolves, and that they liked to eat Scottish terriers for midnight snacks. On the one hand, if you had asked me if my dog was in danger from the creature, I would have said yes. On the other, if you had asked me if Doris was in danger, or if I was, I'm not really sure how I would have answered. Seeing the Dogman once, even seeing 2 of them at once as we did, was that enough for us to see our entire worldview changed? Was that enough for us to formally consider ourselves threatened by a carnivorous predator? I mean, would a sighting of a bear have caused us to change our entire lives? I'm just not sure. At any rate, the chances of seeing a cryptid once in your life is very small, and we had already seen 2 of them at once. As long as we kept our dog and anything else that might attract the monsters back at night, I didn't think they would ever come back. For all we knew, they might have been in Canada or Michigan already. But we did see them again, and it wasn't even summer any longer. So this next incident did cause us to sit down and discuss what we were going to do. We began to suspect that these animals lived near us year-round, which was not something that either of us had any desire to seriously contemplate. If they didn't live here all the time, they at least traveled back to our location twice a year minimum. This changed everything, so let me tell you what exactly happened. My wife Doris's cousin Marianne was in town. Marianne and Doris lived together in college, and then for a couple years after until Doris and I got married. When she comes to stay with us, she's one of the family, and she does chores without us even asking her to do them. So her first night staying at our then new Wisconsin home, Marianne was nice enough to take some garbage out for us. She neglected to ask us where our garbage cans were though, and she left through the front door of the house. Then she turned the wrong way and began walking around the front, down the side, and into increasing darkness. There's a part of that walk if you did it at night, when it got almost completely black and dark. We've since put a motion-activated light out there, but in those days, for about 5 or 6 steps, before you came around to the better-lit part of the backyard, you really couldn't see your hand in front of your face. When Marianne got to that part of the walk, she told us she saw eyes in that darkness, but not human eyes. They seemed to be yellowish, or almost amber-colored animal eyes, which fascinated her. She thought it was some kind of an owl, because she had seen one of those with yellowish eyeshine once before. So she took a step or 2 in order to get closer to it. When Marianne did that, a growling sound erupted from the area occupied by that eyeshine. Owls are not known to make this kind of a growling noise. The sound was too big, and too deep, and too resonant, to have been made by anything other than a large animal. Larger than she was. Marianne dropped our garbage and ran back the way she came. When she reached the front of the house, she turned to see the garbage bag being torn apart by a creature that almost made her faint. Her description stated plainly that she had seen a demon from hell. It was filthy, Its eyes glowed in an unnatural way. It was covered in fur, like a beast of the earth, yet it mocked God's creation by walking upright, as a man might do. I had no idea that Marianne was in any way religious, but when she saw that Dogman, she sure found religion fast. And it was the Dogman that she saw. It was a wolf-headed man, according to her. It had a furry white face with a long snout, gray markings, and a black nose. That was the parent Dogman from our first sighting. Although the young one was not with him or her on that night, this seemed to be proof that we had a year-round problem. I mean, this happened in winter, and we now knew that the Dogman was content living in Wisconsin through its coldest months. How reassuring. Throughout 2019, we had a number of strange experiences with both of those Dogmen. Each sighting or encounter seemed to match the description of one or the other, and so we had no reason to think that there was a third Dogman, or that there were any other strange creatures in the area at all, except for those two. We had been using plastic garbage cans that were labeled bear-proof, and I'm glad to report that they worked. Other than the night that my wife's religious cousin dropped that plastic bag of leftovers in the dark, we haven't had to deal with very much loss from their scavenging. In fact, I don't even know why they were frequenting our home so much by then. We must have been on the way to or from some hunting or scavenging area, unless they were coming around hoping to get at Scotty, in which case those Dogmen don't know how to prioritize very well. Little Scotty doesn't have very much meat on him, you know. Nevertheless, 2019 was the creepiest year of my life, and I'm really afraid of the dark ever since then. I mean, in the way a child would be. It's pathetic. I'm afraid to be in the dark, and Doris even bought me a nightlight. It looked like a penguin. I mean, I liked it, but it didn't give off enough light for me to be able to see every corner of the room at night. I went out and got myself a second nightlight, this one in the shape of a mushroom. It made me feel calm enough that I could fall asleep. At least, it did for a while. One night I bolted up in bed from a nightmare, where someone was trying to break into our house. It was such a relief to wake up and realize it was just a dream. I found myself breathing heavily to catch my breath, as though I'd been running, even though I'd only been running in my dream. But then I heard the window in our room jimmy, and my eyes flashed over to my left. There, just a couple of feet from my eyeballs, I saw the window being rattled by a figure outside with a white, furry face. I stood up out of bed, screaming as I rose, and continuing to shout once I was at my full height. The face was no longer at the window. That white fur face with the black nose, that owl-faced Dogman, was back. Doris was up and at my side while I screamed "Dogman, Dogman," like I had lost my mind. She hugged me and told me it was just a dream. She reminded me that we slept on the second floor and gestured down out of the window to the lawn far below. We both looked where she was pointing, and we both saw the large and small Dogmen. They were running away from our house and back into the woods to the rear. Doris never finished the sentence she started. We both just sort of stood there staring for a while. And then, we both went back to bed. The next day found us at the department store, buying window guards and shutters for all the windows on both main floors of our home. We had neighbors on both sides of us move out within a year of each other. We had guests staying over our house tell us that we had dog-headed monkeys outside. We had a mailman retire early when they wouldn't take him off the route near our home. The year of 2019 was very surreal for us. We were both working jobs in different cities that were over an hour away driving, and commuting back home daily to be haunted by the Dogman at night. It had moved past them seeming to be searching for food on our property. By the middle of that year, they were acting like we lived on their playground, or their personal property. They seemed to bother us not so much in the pursuit of food or prey, but just because we were there. It reached the point where by the autumn, when I saw the big one dart out onto the road in front of me, I didn't hit the brakes. I hit the gas, and I aimed for the thing. He or she or it dove out of the way into the woods, but I hoped I was sending a clear message. We were afraid of these creatures, and we were sick of them acting like they owned our home. In the plague year of 2020, we both spent a lot of money and time setting up 24 trap cameras everywhere on our property and looking out onto parts of the forest behind us that we didn't actually own. As a result, the 2 dogmen went away. I didn't know where the 2 of them went, but we stopped seeing them, and the photos we got were all of normal and well-known animals, nothing exotic in any way. We never succeeded in getting one single photograph of either creature. Finally, after a second straight summer of no sightings, we went around and took down however many of the cameras were still working. I figured, well, that's that. But then, right around Christmas time, my wife started screaming from the kitchen that she was seeing the Dogman. Of course I came running, but when I looked out the back window, I was very surprised by what I saw. It was the size of the large Dogman. But the markings were just different. They looked like the markings of the younger one, but that creature was only 4 feet. This was a big animal, at least 9 feet, probably more. It was alternately sniffing the ground and making little yips up into the air that reminded me of the sounds coyotes make. While we watched, out of the trees behind that creature emerged another of the same size, roughly. When I saw the face of that second one, I recognized the markings. That was the parent, the one who either had to have been the mother or the father. There was no mistaking who that one was. "The little one is grown," said my wife. It had only been 2 years since we last saw him. Could he have really grown 5 feet or more and become an adult in that short a time? Or could this be a friend or relative or maybe a new mate for the original large creature? I was uncertain at first, but my wife had no doubt that we were still looking at the same 2 dogmen. If that is true, then the younger one certainly had quite a growth spurt in those 2 years. They must mature at a rate faster than young human beings, but not as fast as canine youth. I suppose that would make sense, at least as much sense as any of this makes. At any rate, my wife has a plan to set up new cameras, but inside our house this time, looking out windows. They would still be motion activated but plugged in, and hopefully less detectable than the battery-powered ones that we used to have outside. I don't know if her plan will work, but at least she has a plan. My plan is going to be sleeping pills if this keeps up for much longer. I got used to quiet nights, and now these nocturnal nightmares have come back. You know, maybe I actually do have a plan for dealing with this. Maybe what we need to do is buy a bunch of new battery-operated cameras and set them up all around the place all over again. I don't expect that would get us any photos of the animals, but it might frighten them off again, like it did in 2020. Buying that many cameras in this economy wouldn't be cheap, I'm sure. But what price do you put on a good night's sleep and the safety of your wife and your terrier? My family hasn't felt safe since our turf got reinvaded by Dogman and Son. When it comes to EP Joanne Maracle, I can grow quite panegyrical. Please join us in thanking Joanne Maracle for her recent super thanks donation to us on YouTube. You too can donate to us and be named executive producer for the day. And Joanne, if you write to scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com, we'll email you back some links to some secret episodes. I am currently working on some new secret shows. I had a setback on my schedule recently, but I am working now to catch up. Here with some more info about our secret perks is our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.